In many ways, the reason we're here has to do with place. I think a lot of what we are referring to as the original study was investigating place. Are we online? Do we get better results? Are we virtual? Now, of course, hybrid has entered our vocabulary. And place is also going to be a big facet of the upcoming experiment that we were just talking about in looking at our results through a place lens and how does it factor in. In the last 2.5 days, we've had lots of conversations about technology, about how to engage, about facilitation technique. What I'd like for us to do in the next 60 minutes is have some of those discussions, starting with place or revisiting place as the starting point, and doing that with, in my words, professional place people in this panel discussion. So I'd like to give a brief intro. We'll go through, of course, and they'll introduce themselves and you'll get to know them through their answers. We have a 3-person panel today. As we go, please feel free to submit your questions through the chat. We're going to hold some time at the end as well to open it up. But as real-time questions are coming in based on what it is we're talking about, we'll try to incorporate them real-time into the conversation. So who is the panel? I'd like to introduce Rowan De Bruin. Rowan is the global head of workplace advisory at Mapiq, a smart workday software platform that connects people to their workspaces and to each other. Ryan Anderson, who serves as the Vice President of Global Research and Insights at MillerKnoll. His team leads MillerKnoll's research efforts in partnership with a wide variety of global collaborators and is active in sharing insights gained from that research with organizations across the world. James Frankus, who is the Director of Product at Convene. He's responsible for delivering a great customer experience in Convene's premium meetings, events, and workplace offer. Working throughout the acquisition and design process, James defines product metrics, pricing, packaging, operations, experience, and design standards. Currently, he's focused on developing the hybrid meetings experience for Convene. Okay, I see that we've been spotlighted. So I want to give you the chance to introduce yourselves with our initial prompt here, and we'll go down one by one. And James, I'll ask you to lead it off. Maybe James, Rowan, and then Ryan. Where are we? What happened, and where are we? Can you give us a little bit of clarity through your lens? March 16th, 2020, somewhere thereabouts, we all got sent home to work from there. And in different fits and starts in different places around the world, we've returned in some form or fashion. We have different CEOs espousing different policies, and this works and that works. We've seen reports about productivity is up and then it's down, and then COVID is spiking. Oh, no, it's not. But here are these other externalities. And what are we not thinking about? James, where are we and how did we get here? What are you seeing?
So, yeah, where are we? I think everyone feels a bit that way, don't they? I feel like I've been spun around a couple of times. I think personally, I suddenly find myself living by the sea in the UK Kent coast, going into London maybe one day a week, whereas before I was going in 5 days a week into an office. So, you know, I'm living and breathing that remote work. But I think will explain a little bit through this conversation, kind of my attitude as well towards it. And Convene is, you know, we're a meetings and events business. We build flexible meetings and events conference spaces to a lesser degree, but still important part of the product mix, workplace. So a competitor to WeWork or Industrious or any of the other players out there in the market. And we're a completely remote company. So we build physical spaces, yet we're a remote company. And I kind of love the irony of that, right? That because we are a flex space, right? That's the whole point. We create spaces for people to flex in and out of, and we live and breathe that, or eat our own dog food, as people say. So I think to answer your question, where are we? Convene March 2020, our revenue effectively went to zero overnight. We lease meetings and event spaces, which we then sell out to other people. It was illegal to run our business for 18 months, right? But we still had to pay our rent. So tough time. We went through a lot of change. We developed a hybrid meetings product. We're now coming out the other side of that. And I think meetings and events is a unique industry, which is going to become less of a, I guess, it's quite a closed industry right now, but increasingly we're having more and more conversations with more people from across the organization, because meetings and events are increasingly becoming important in this return to work. What we've seen for right now is recovery is weird. It's not even. Chicago is very flat, nowhere near where it was in 2019 in terms of return to office, desk rates, hotel stays, any metric of hospitality, nowhere near. New York, back to 2019. London, back to 2019. So it's been an interesting recovery on the meetings and events side. That said, when I say back to 2019, large meetings and events, peak experiences, big experiences that get people so excited and want to come in. Small meetings and events, which could now be online, maybe they're online forever. And I think it's been an interesting mixed recovery on that front. I think we'll continue to see evolution, but I'll leave it there. I don't want to talk for ages. I could go on and on, but I should hand over to someone else. So
yeah, Rowan, would you pick it up, please?
Yeah, of course. I think what James is saying, that it's uneven, is something we see as well. We work on a global level, so we see that companies that worked in a flexible way pre-pandemic are also now currently the ones with higher occupancy levels. So people were already used to working from home more often or having a flex schedule. Whereas we see that the companies that started with this because of the pandemic, there it's way more difficult. And I think it also has a lot to do with the moment that you get comfortable just plugging in your screen in the morning after you had the time to take care of your family or work out. It's really difficult to change that behavior the moment that you are asking people to come back. And I think that a lot of companies are just struggling with, do we want people to come back? Is it relevant for us? What are those productivity levels? I think a key metric is that if there's a crisis, people come together and we work through it, and we are all working very hard to keep up those levels. But I think now we're trying to keep up a lot of balls at the same time, and that is really challenging. So I think over the upcoming months, I'm very curious, and years probably, what those productivity levels will be. I think we see the first signs where connections between teams are breaking. It's just very difficult to stay up to date with everything that's going on in an organization. And it's always difficult, especially if we talk about organizations with 10,000s of people. You just don't know everybody, and you don't know every department, and you don't know why their job is so difficult, or why you should ask them way more nicely than a month ago. Maybe there's something going on that is very difficult and challenging, and it will stay that way. But I think that the part that we can be anywhere, anytime to do our jobs, and that we also expect that flexibility from our office workers, makes it even more challenging. And I think, we will talk about it today, but what we really see is that the companies that take this on, not as a one-time project to get people back, but really as something, as a department, the workplace department, or whatever you want to call it, there we see real changes going on, and also more occupied offices, or better results from employee surveys or health levels. Ryan, continue, because we could go on.
No, it's good. I'm going to build off what you said. So, hey, everyone, I'm Ryan. I lead the global research team for a company called Miller Knoll, which includes furniture companies like Herman Miller, Knoll, but also retail companies, Design Within Reach. Our team studies spaces, workplaces, homes, hospitals, schools. And as far as where we're at in terms of work, the easiest way I can help to frame this up is that we're at the convergence of two really important things. One is distributed working, and the other is flexibility, just like Rowan said. Distributed working is just like the spreading out of work. And it didn't start with the pandemic. It started with Wi-Fi and mobile technologies. And so for 15 years, Work spread out across the building, across the city, across the world. Desk utilization levels, building badge swipes all went down for the most part consistently over those 15 years. Organizations weren't paying attention to it. There was generally a feeling like offices function just fine. Average office occupancy was 30 to 40% in most organizations. Desk utilization was under 30. So it wasn't a particularly sustainable track we were on in terms of like building these spaces with rows of desks for people that were spending less and less time doing individual desk-based work. So this had kind of like a long lead up, and the pandemic shone a light on that. Now, today, the real driver of major change is employees' desire for more flexibility. We're a founding member of this group called Future Forum, Slack, Boston Consulting Group, Miller Knoll, and a group called MLT. We survey 10,000 people every quarter. And the driver is primarily schedule flexibility. 94% of people want more control over their calendar. It doesn't just mean their working hours. It means they want to do the work they want to do when they want to do it and where they want to do it. 80% of people want more location flexibility. And so if you look at those two things, employee desire for flexibility, the notion that the work has spread out, you get to an interesting point. I think organizations can solve it by looking at either of those or both. But hybrid as a strategy has kind of gotten stuck for a lot of organizations. It's like the CEO gave a concession that, okay, you don't have to be in the office all the time. HR adopted a policy that said you can work from home a couple days a week. That doesn't mean anybody's actually working differently. Nor does it mean that the spaces are any better at supporting those changes in work. So not anti-hybrid by any means, but I think most organizations have found that adopting a hybrid policy hasn't changed much, and they're going to have to get deeper into the work and into the design of their space.
So I'd like to call that out, because I think you, in your taking us back to pre-pandemic and with the advent of Wi-Fi, you talked about distributed, then it seems hybrid, and then this term, I don't know if I know the difference between hybrid and flex. Could you give a little more insight into what that means, maybe not just from a place standpoint, but also from a control? Is it a control thing? Is it?
Well, I'll frame it in terms of what I was just talking about. When we start talking about hybrid, it's really around enabling people to have choice over where they might work. When we start talking flex, it can mean one of two things. I was referring to it in terms of flexible working, like how much control each person has over how, where, and when they work as an individual and as part of a team. But certainly with James on the call, there is a really important shift happening within the world of real estate, which is a lot of organizations are going to shrink the amount of space that they have in terms of long-term leases and look to places like Convene to solve a variety of things that they might need where they don't want to get into a long-term lease, or they don't want to have a full-time office. It could be gathering, could be community, it could be supporting day-to-day work. And it's just like an investment portfolio or real estate portfolio can have many things. I think generally most of the organizations I talk to, which are generally larger organizations that are global, are thinking that they might shrink up the amount of space they have. They're probably going to make it better. Interestingly, the designs of the spaces we're seeing are actually better and richer, and in some cases, heavier investment than maybe what we saw 5 years ago. But they might have less of it overall, and they're going to rely on a Convene as a key partner and others to make sure that they have spaces that solve what their corporate portfolio doesn't. Sorry, James, I'm basically sharing your value prop.
Good advocacy. Love it. I think we should do some jargon busting. I think if we're probably going to have a mixed audience here, and making sure that I've got the chat open on the side, so if things aren't clear, please say what do you mean by. But I think if you talk to a real estate broker and you say flex, then they're thinking WeWork, Convene, insert any one of the many operators out there. If you say to a head of real estate or a head of workplace, perhaps flex, they maybe are thinking agile working or hybrid working or whatever their name for it is. I then think both are going to increase, right? Like we've seen workplace uptake dramatically increase in both membership, so like individuals buying space into just a free floating environment where they can choose where they sit, right? And also like buying a work suite on a monthly contract where you can leave it at a moment's notice. Tons of organizations are solving organizations solving for their immediate challenges where perhaps they downsize too quickly. Some organizations solving for their indecision where they don't know what they're going to do and they know that they need space today, but they don't know exactly what for yet. And some organizations solving for, we now we lost an office in a location, how do we gain a hub or a satellite in a specific location without necessarily committing to large format real estate? And not compared to every one of our clients, but many of our clients, I think we design space better. I think, a lot of our spaces have amenities and features and infrastructure that they would not have in their own office. And so that kind of I'm not sure that allure back to the office really works, but I know that people want it, right? So as a product designer, I have to think about what are we trying to sell, not always what's necessarily going to be 100% effective. I don't know if luring people back to the office is necessarily the right way of getting them back in. But what we're increasingly seeing is the fact that we offer food in the space and fresh plated food, not just a vending machine, right? And we have large boardrooms and we have gym facilities and fitness facilities. All of these things alongside it is a real driver to buy, right? As people start looking for ways to lure people back.
Just to clarify, James, because I think I had a particular model of what Convene was compared to some of the other brands that are at least in the orbit in the space. To me, WeWork was always more of that's my 9 to 5, I'm going to go in there. I had the impression, maybe incorrectly so, that Convene was more of yes, you can come in and you can do your 9 to 5 on the daily, but this is more events, this is more experience.
Let me zoom out a second for all the businesses. I think that's a great question, and we get put in because it's both. So the original thesis of the entire business was, what if we could run a office building like a hotel, remove the rooms and put tenants into that space instead, right? And so we were designing a space that could create infrastructure and amenities for an entire asset. So that isn't just meetings and events and workplace. It's lots of different things. The primary two products we offer are meetings and events, like I said, and that is large format 300 person, 200 person rooms for large format conferences sold externally or for use within the building. And we're talking large New York towers here, 1 million square feet plus type buildings. And so that when you build that infrastructure, you've got a full service kitchen, hospitality staff, you've got all the Wi-Fi network connectivity, everything you need to create a large format meetings and events business. It's a very small add to add a workplace on top of that, right? So to add private co-working suites on top of that, we needed a couple of extra staff and we could create a super premium workplace experience. So we offer both products. We have clients who buy from both sides of things. So we've got people who take a work suite with us and also take a 200 person meeting just for a day, right? And that mix of products means that to a large enterprise, we can be kind of a flex solution. Oh, I want an event from Convene. I want a workplace from Convene. I want one in Chicago and I want one in New York. I want one in London, right? It's that kind of enterprise real estate solution at that level. And to an individual buyer, it's more like I just want a membership or I'm just buying a meeting. So that's how we do both.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that up. Because of the word you use, lure. And thinking, are we luring for an event? Are we coming back in person for that big 300 person event? Are we luring people coming back into the 9 to 5? And I wanted to follow up with Rowan. How does you're dealing with clients who are trying to get people back into the office? Are they luring them back? It sounds like some of these mandates, these policy mandates to get people back in are not working. What are you seeing is getting people back into the office or stopping them from going back into the office?
Yeah, I think what we've learned over the past definitely 1.5 years, that the thing that gets people back in are the people. So I think we do a lot of testing how our technology could help to get people back, because often if we talk to our clients, what's your biggest goal, what's your biggest aim, what is the star on the horizon? Your app needs to bring the people back. Our technology is not going to bring the people back, but we can definitely help to bring the people together at the right time. What we really see as what we are preparing our customers for or non-customers for is that in the end, scarcity in the workplace will happen, or will return. It depends a bit on how your occupancy level was pre-pandemic, but I think similar as Ryan mentioned, our imagination that the office was ever full, that has never been the case. There were definitely peak hours or peak days. Tuesdays, Thursdays are very popular, or the Fridays at the consultancies, but I think that what we see coming back in every conversation with employees, like, what do you need from us to make you decide to go in? Yeah, I want to know when my colleagues are in. And that was one of the simplest features, yeah, that we could build. And then there's, of course, a whole journey around it. But yeah, it's vital to know if I'm going to commute all the way into the office, I expect my team to be there, and at least, or the people that I have meetings with. There's nothing more demotivating than you getting out there early morning, it's raining, and coming into the office and being in a phone booth the entire day while you expected to have a very interactive day at the office. And then if there's actually no food because, yeah, there's almost no people coming in, yeah, the whole experience of the office, it needs to be lively and bubbly, and there needs to be people chatting and nice food and healthy and plants and green, and it needs to be just a little bit more like a hotel, like James is referring to, than our office and then our home is, because our home is really comfortable. As I mentioned, like being able to just sit down, plug in, or maybe your plug is already in, and just sit down and start your workday and follow a schedule without having to book a parking spot, inform other people that you're going, book a meeting room, change the meeting room, work out how the technology works, because we're all testing out 80 different types of video conferencing tools. Yeah, it's just a lot of hassle, I think, currently. And I think we need to take away that hassle and make it a little bit more like a hotel for people to come back with very clear guidelines.
Yeah, Rowan mentioned, and I want to prompt to you, Ryan. Rowan, I think this is a quote. Our homes are comfortable. Are our homes too comfortable?
No,
Ryan?
No, our homes are not too comfortable. The homes need to be far more comfortable. And if anything, because we do research on kind of the state of homes around the world as well, often our homes are dominated by activities that may be less of a priority than what we want them to be. So for many people, that was work, and it may have actually interfered with our ability to have quality respite and socialization and restoration in our homes. No, what I was going to share was that, and I'm trying not to be too stat heavy here, but we've done quite a bit of research around why people don't choose to come into the office on a given day if they can work flexibly. There were two things that were tied for first in our survey in September. The first was commute time and distance. That didn't surprise us. Excuse me, commute time and cost, forgive me. So the investment in time and money in getting from point A to point B is critical. And I think our views of the commute have changed. And during the pandemic, a lot of people's commute times turned into work time. So it feels like there's even less opportunity to do it. Tied for first was overall physical, mental, and emotional well-being, which I will say surprised me, but it's reflective of the challenges people are having in their personal and professional lives with burnout, mental health distress, emotional health distress. The Surgeon General put out a piece that was fascinating just last month, talking about the state of mental health of the American workforce. More than 70% of people showed at least one symptom of not being mentally well. And so it's natural to want to stay close to home when your spouse or your kid or you are feeling distressed and having trouble. But if I keep going down the list, caregiving responsibilities, elder care, child care, pet care was on there. But the one that I think deserves a lot more attention, because it came in actually at number 3, is overscheduled meetings. So when people left the office, they started to recreate as many of those in-office experiences on video as possible. And when we do interviews with employees of different organizations, it's one of the most common things we hear. If I have 5 or 6 hours of meetings, and today's video products, Zoom, Teams, Hangouts, unlike the old school Cisco, Polycom, these are designed to be used individually, primarily, not as groups. People find themselves putting in the commute, putting on the makeup, putting the dog away, getting ready, driving in, taking the train in to sit in front of a laptop for 5 or 6 hours. So the organizations, including ours, that have had the most success with their return to office, not only ask people to spend more time together, but they give them the freedom to have more autonomy over their schedule. Block that time out, say no to meetings for at least half or 2/3 of the day when you're in office. Socialize, spend time doing quiet, reflective work. Like there needs to be more variance and more autonomy in people's schedule. So asking them to spend time together is a heck of a lot easier if you're giving them the chance to say no to sitting in front of a laptop for 2/3 of their day.
One thing I think has been interesting, a trend that we've seen this side of the pandemic has been teams buying community space. So previously it was really individuals buying community space, and then their teams would buy enclosed space. But like now you buy an enclosed space, your team all turns up and they're all on different Zoom calls. It's actually a horrible environment, right? It doesn't really work when you're all sitting next to each other, everyone with their headphones in. But if you buy your team community space, then no matter what, they come in, someone will be there. They won't actually necessarily be from even the same business as you, but you feel like you're going into an environment which is buzzing and active and has people around you, and you feel like you can socialize. And even if just one other team member is there, it feels like it was worth going in, versus going into a enclosed environment, either you're a private office or wherever it might be, and realizing how empty that is, right? And just seeing a sea of empty desks and thinking, God, this is miserable, right? Just like sitting here in the cube farm, the empty cube farm. It's even worse than the full cube farm, right? So I think that's been an interesting trend that we've seen. It's always sometimes challenging for us to manage because people are on phone calls out in the open area, and we have to like try and get our community managers to try and mitigate that. But ultimately, I think it's a positive thing that people are seeking people, even if they're not necessarily the same people, even from their same business.
Yeah, so let's move to this, because I think you started to paint a picture of what a future fit workplace is going to start to look like, and people seeking people. And I think that's a big theme of what you're trying to do, Rowan, right? You're trying to match the people who are seeking people. What is a future fit workplace? What's a vision for that you have?
Yeah, we have brainstormed about this a lot over the past years in Mapiq, and I think what we're now currently working towards to as an organization is that if we really combine all the input that we're always getting from the people, like imagine the tech working for you and the building working for you and everything just flowing, like no, well, rain we cannot stop, but imagine like your phone telling you set your alarm tomorrow 6:30, you have to leave before 7 because otherwise you'll be stuck in traffic. You will arrive at the office around 7:30. You will have 1.5 hours of focus time. It's early morning. There's not a lot of people in yet, or your team not in yet. Decide to go to the gym, decide to get a walk, exercise, or do your focus work. Like give some options around how to plan those hours. Then everything throughout your day in the office, yeah, it would be amazing if you don't need to plan or schedule or book anything of it. Like the company, I am coming. That's the only thing that I'm telling the technology. I am planning to be in the office that day, based probably on a suggestion that it's a relevant day for me to be there because my team is there or I have on-site meetings. And I just let them know I'm coming in and the rooms are booked. I know where to go. I know I see a here and now page. Your next meeting is starting in 15 minutes. If it's a big campus, start walking. Spend some time with your colleagues. I think what you just mentioned, Ryan, I think it was 2 quarterlies ago. We have like quarterlies and yearlies in the company. And our CEO was on stage and he really took the time. Like, I expect you to socialize here. That is part of your job. I want you to drink coffee, welcome new hires. If it's the first of the month, we know we have people starting. Please all be here and chat and talk about who you are as a person and what motivates you. And I loved, but I really noticed that my team, who is like quite young, Gen Z, that it really resonated with them. Like, it's okay for me to be here and not be heads down at my desk, working very hard, but to be a person. So I think that is a really important part of it. And I just want to not take care of all the hassle. I just want somebody tell me where to be, where to go. I don't mind about my schedule or like, I just want to let them know my preferences and take care of it like a personal assistant. I think that everybody deserves that personal assistant that tells you, don't schedule 2 Teams meeting right before you go into a panel or right before you go into a brainstorm session, or don't schedule that brainstorm session at 5 in the afternoon. You won't have brain capacity to do that. That is something I think we're really, or if we look at the future, that is really going to be a big thing.
I think you touched on a really great concept there of, I think, the future of workplace, which I don't know, it was there pre pandemic, but I think more, I don't know, anecdotally, I find myself, the main reason for going into the office is social occasions, and then I build work around it, be that a lunch, be that a dinner, be that a meeting which is more in person but is going to be less business and more like get to know someone for the first time type business meeting. So the sites that are doing best that we have right now have big central hub core areas, usually around a cafe or food, that make natural congregating social space. And those are the sites which are most full right now. And to me, that's the model we're moving forwards with and designing. So it's like a really tangible, like new thing that we're doing that we're going to do at all sites is this concept of a heart. So what do we create in the middle of that heart is going to vary a bit by site, but we're going to try and cluster everything to come off a central core, including arrival, so everyone comes through that experience, and it makes these social hubs. And then when people want to leave and focus, they go away from that. I mean, it's a simple concept, but I think that just creates this experience that when you arrive, you've arrived somewhere and that people are in your office, and that's great, right? That's why you came in.
And I think just to tie it back to something you said before, James, is right now, and when you go into the office, many times you're just doing what you were doing at home. And the office space has to be designed for a different purpose. Ryan, how do these concepts fit with how you're imagining at MillerKnoll the future?
Sure. So we tend to think of it in a couple different ways, and we do have kind of a deep dive on this for those that might be interested in going further. But in terms of the experiences of the employees, you can kind of think about it in almost a bell curve, with what James and Rowan were just describing on one end, which is highly social, collegial, community sort of experiences where you're primarily going to have some form of interaction. It could be strengthening what sociologists call weak ties, your extended network, just have that sense that you're part of something. Could be getting more quality time with people beyond what you can do on Zoom on your immediate team. Could be spending face time with management, which is a great way of feeling grounded in what's going on in the organization. But on the other end of the bell curve are highly focused, concentrative experiences, which the workplace has generally not supported very well. And 58% of the people that have used our work from home tool, we've had about, I think we just crossed 30,000 people globally that have used it, have said that focus and concentration at home is their number one challenge. I know that flies in the face of some stereotypes. If you happen to be somebody who's maybe an empty nester, you got a spare room with a door, you're not going to have trouble concentrating. Actually, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes there's spotty Wi-Fi. There's somebody using a leaf blower. It's not that it exists every day, but when you need 2 hours on a spreadsheet or you've got something critical, people will seek out a place they know they can get away from everyone and concentrate. So if you think of a typical office design, is it really good at focused, concentrative work? No. Is it really good at social camaraderie and community building? No. Rows of desks and generic conference rooms live right in the middle. And so you have to diversify the use of the space to offer more value. And that's how we tend to think of it. Less around luring people, more around giving them more value to support the experiences they want. For those involved in space planning, we just use a simple framework of 6 types of space, which I won't go super into now, but they're based on the community, the team, and the individual. I would agree with James. I think that the new nucleus for workplace design is really the team. But I happen to be working today from one of our brands, our Knoll brand in Chicago, and I'm here for a big workshop of 30 people. So that's what we would consider to be like a community assembly space. What I didn't know is that there's 2 other groups here doing the same thing. We could use a convene space here, actually. And so like community assembly versus community socializations are 2 of those types. Sometimes you just want to find a place that feels like a coffee bar. Other times you want a space that feels like an event space. And there's huge demand for those sort of things. So by using that framework, and I won't go through all of it, it's just a gut check for an organization to say, do we have the types of spaces we know people want? And this is based on studying organizations that supported flexible work 5, 10, 20 years ago. We saw how they evolved and we worked with them to create their spaces. So there is a roadmap. The tougher part is being patient in the short term while people adjust their lifestyle. Return to office rates are going up, but they're going up very slowly. It's like watching a balanced mutual fund instead of a stock ticker. And so we really try to get organizations thinking about their long-term workplace plan, which will inform the short term, instead of being like, what are the badge swipes today? What are the badge swipes today? Which, if I don't have a conversation about badge swipes in the next year, it would be like a gift from God.
So can we talk a little bit about how to get there? If flex space building around community, maybe building around food. I don't know if I interpreted what you were saying, James, that those seemed where you've had the community with cafes in the middle of them doing really, really well. In a vision of my personal assistant, Rowan, as you pointed out, telling me where and when I should be or how to schedule the day based on my preferences or my strengths and the availability of the people that I'm working with. Maybe I want to go back to you, James, because I think you're looking at the experience, you're looking at measures, you're looking at operations. How do we think maybe in the short term, what are some things that we can start doing to move down the path of a future fit workplace now? What are some of the metrics that you're looking at? What are some of the steps people can take, even if they're not managing a space like yours? Are there things that leaders can do to begin to create that future fit workplace now?
Yeah, I think I don't think anything new needs to exist in the world together, right? With everything exists that's required for the future, it just isn't being brought together in one place necessarily, and different organizations are taking it up in different ways, and every organization is different. So there's not going to be a like perfect, this is what you should do type solution. If you're developing engineering products, you're going to probably need to have factory type spaces. If you're a consultancy, you're going to have your people out of clients all the time, as two very tangible examples of how just organizations are never going to be exactly the same. In my view, I think there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, as Rowan said, right? Like, how are we going to move people from the behaviors that they're already in? Like that was hard enough anyway. And as Ryan really well pointed out, offices weren't full before. It's not as big a shift as everyone is claiming it even is. I think people were working differently for sure, and there was less working from home, but plenty of companies were completely remote prior to the pandemic. That's not a new concept at all. So I think waiting for the noise to die down will be really positive, and waiting for less CEOs to be sort of yelling one extreme or the other is going to be only positive, to let things kind of settle down into something of a middle ground. I mean, tangible things, right? I think it's very easy that there has to be space and policy together. And I don't mean policy about HR policy necessarily. I more mean like when someone asked about hybrid meetings, and I can talk more about like big hybrid meetings and small hybrid meetings and also different hybrid meetings, right? But for example, when our team does a combination in-person and remote meeting, everyone in the room will also open up their laptop and go completely on mute, no sound connection, but just video, so that you can see every single person in the room's face, because no camera sitting at the end of a table is ever going to be high quality enough or good enough or move in the right way or swing around and look at people or do whatever it needs to do to emulate the kind of seeing people's reaction like you would get it in the room, right? And that's kind of, and it makes it so much clearer for a virtual participant to see what's going on in the room if they can see everyone's face in the room and get that, okay, that person is speaking. I didn't even realize they were speaking if I'm just looking at this tiny like little picture at the top end, right? And you know, it can cut both ways. Being in a physically present in a very strong around a very vocal virtual group can mean that the room completely gets alienated. Sometimes it's often seen that in person is always going to outweigh virtual, and I think I've seen it work both ways, where sometimes the virtual has completely outweighed the room, where they feel like they can't get a word in edgeways. So I think being really intentional about how you use the technology, right? And I compare it to driving a car, right? You can drive on the wrong side of the road. It is physically possible. It's just stupid because it's going to cause problems, right? And it's the same with any kind of technology. Yes, you can use Zoom and Teams and all these things in lots of different ways. It doesn't mean it's a sensible way to use it. And I think there are certain things you wouldn't do in a physical meeting, and there's certain rules that you set. And I don't know if we've completely got there yet as like what those rules are. And I think that as an organization is super critical, because you're now, the idea that you're ever going to have a meeting again where everyone's in person is just like, it's so small at this point. So you just have to assume that it's going to be that way, and trying to build a culture and organization that accepts that and makes time for it, I think is a massive part of the shift. And I'm really proud of where Convene's gone with like the remote working journey and going from a fully in-person to a fully remote company. I think we've done a really good arc there, like internally, like let alone the spaces we build. I'm really proud of the kind of cultural journey we've gone on. I think that's the place to me, that's the place to focus, right? Space in some ways is hard, it's slow moving, difficult to build. And I love building space, and I would love to talk about space later, but I think the culture is so important as well.
David, you're mute.
There was speaking of distractions at home, I'm in New York. There was some street noise. Rowan, is that what you're seeing is working well, or what are you seeing is working well as we get to future fit?
Yeah, I think there's two really important points. That we have the short-term focus for the workplace teams, and I think that has a lot to do with what James just mentioned. Like this Monday, somebody literally told me when we were visiting an office close to the airport of Amsterdam, quite a large office for the Netherlands, and they were testing out different technology. So one had a Logitech screen and one had a Poly screen, and they had a round table against the wall, and there was a big screen, and it looked really cool. And behind that there was a high table also, but then square shaped with high chairs. And I asked the people in the room, how would you use this room setup? And everybody would do it differently. And everybody was just touching all the buttons that were there, trying out the technology. Is this a touch screen? Oh, it's no touch screen, but can we brainstorm on this? And then the wall on the back was like a white paint that you could actually brainstorm on with a pen. So the questions were, if we write on here, will it be reflected on the screen? Yeah, this is like literally an example of like people just not knowing how to work the room. And I think that's a real waste, because there's so much out there that is really cool and we could benefit from it and it could make our lives easier. But currently it's making it a little bit more difficult, and we just turn back to a paper and we just go back to what we know. And I think also a big part of it is when I started at Mapiq was quite a high-tech environment with already flexible working, remote working, but there were a lot of people there educating me on how to use it. Now you just walk in there by yourself and there's like not really a guideline. So I think there's a lot to do around how do we expect you to use the space, like not even those technologies, but also like when to use a phone booth, when to use a meeting room, what type of meeting rooms, what type of silent spaces. Can I make a phone call from behind my desk with my headset on, or am I expected to do that from a closed environment? It sounds simple, but there is $1 million question, I think, there for people before they would return and before we can work on the future. On the other hand, it's so important, that's the second point, to look at the long term, because people are adapting their behavior right now. So maybe before you make those short-term policies and how you expect people to use the space, think about your strategy on the long term. If you are telling people now you can use that 4 or 8 or 10 people meeting room to do a call if it's available, we have the space anyways, and in 2 years time you're planning to move to a smaller office where people are expected to do those calls from a phone booth, you have to change behavior again. And don't forget, it's so difficult to change people's behavior. So I think that those two-term strategies need to work together, and we just need to keep it simple on how we explain it to people before we can get them along, I think.
Ryan, I saw you nodding.
I think I was nodding a lot.
Yeah,
I mean,
you were.
one of the themes that both Rowan and James have echoed is it does take a while to adapt our physical environments, but our behaviors and the mindsets of leaders may actually evolve more slowly in some cases than a space can adapt. So, if I look back over the last few years, there's been a very significant but still slow shift in managerial mindsets about what it means to lead, and offices were originally conceptualized to supervise work. They were very hierarchical. They were designed for managers and leaders, the bosses, not for the employees. And I think a combination of factors, but primarily labor-driven ones. And as I mentioned, BCG is a close research partner. Some of their most recent results on what's happening with the labor force globally, but particularly in the US, indicates that even if we're sinking into a recession, here there's 1.7 jobs for every job seeker right now. If organizations really want to try to be better, more agile, more employee-centric, it means that you've got to help people to work differently and design spaces, not just for employees, but with employees. And that is a very significant change, which is why I agree. The long-term focus, if a head of corporate real estate, human resources, IT can say, all right, what does it look like for us to work in new and better ways in 2025? Recognizing that the way we work now may not be the ideal. It's probably more of a crisis response to the pandemic that we're kind of stuck in. Then that provides a heck of a lot better roadmap than anything else you can do.
Yeah, I think just to touch on that kind of like point that there's a shifting priority and different people are being involved, I guess is what I'm trying to say, in what the workplace is than perhaps were previously. I mean, I think in really progressive companies, it's always gone all the way up to the CEO, like what a workplace is and what the office is for. But I think increasingly that's been happening in companies which wouldn't have had much interaction with the CEO. It was like a budget line item that was annoying, right? But didn't really think about it too much. Oh, great, the new office looks pretty cool, done. Now workplace strategy is increasingly at like the fore. Like I used to work for Gensler as a workplace strategist. I never had workplace strategy conversations with my friends. They had no idea what I did. Now post-pandemic, right, everyone is on the first thing on everyone's mind, right? So it's kind of cool it's happened, and that shift has happened. Somewhat frustrating because you've tried to bang the drum for years, but then no one listened. But I think that just from Convene's perspective as well, that client profile has shifted. And I think, yes, on the people buying work suites is different, but I think most fascinating is that meeting strategy has become part of the workplace. So workplace strategy has become part of the CEO's mandate, and then meeting strategy has become part of the workplace strategy as well. So we're seeing much more like, okay, we're going to schedule a quarterly, or we're going to schedule a monthly all hands, a quarterly like full company get together, and a half yearly like sales incentive meeting, right? And that's going to be our schedule throughout the year. We want to pre-plan those, we want to budget those want to be peak experience. That's going to get XYZ employees together with these objectives, right? And we didn't really have conversation like that. There'd be suddenly last minute, oh, we're doing a offsite, right? Type events. It wasn't built into the same degree with most companies as that part of their strategic initiatives and people and culture initiatives to bring people together. And I think that's a really positive shift in companies' mindsets to say, like, actively we want to get our staff socializing together, hearing the full company message, creating cultural events in a place. So good, positive for Convene from a business sense, but also very positive, I think, just for employees.
I'll just add one thing on, which is something you said really reminded me of this. When leaders can view their organizations not just as a series of employees, but as a community or as a network that either functions in healthy or unhealthy sort of ways, I think it can be pretty transformative to a lot of the ways that organizations approach supporting work, but also their places, because that's what differentiates a company or a nonprofit from being simply a group of gig workers or freelancers. Is there a sense of belonging? Do they feel a shared sense of purpose? Are they functioning as a healthy organizational network? I mentioned the sociological framework of strong ties, weak ties. I won't get too into it, but basically your strong ties are like your closest, teammates. Your weak ties are those extended networks. The pandemic devastated our weak ties in almost all facets of life. We quarantined, we jumped on Zoom meetings, we lost track of dozens or hundreds of people. And so organizations are often functioning like dozens or hundreds of small little companies that are disconnected. So reestablishing those cross-cutting ties, trying to figure out how to get those teams that don't have any reason, or individuals that don't have any reason to have a meeting with each other back in community is the only way to really scale something. How are you going to scale the innovation or an implementation of something if the network is so balkanized? And so I think there's a key there. And the more that leaders can say, well, we're either functioning as a healthy community or we're not, it's a good path forward.
Thank you. I think that's a great point to maybe open it up for questions from our attendees here. I see one in the chat going back up a bit. BG, if you're here, yes, I see. You asked about how spaces can be designed to support different functions. Would you like to voice that in more detail? Okay, maybe BG stepped
Yeah,
away.
sorry.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I find that in talking to people, for example, sales teams are saying that they'll bring their people together to have a meeting and do all hands more often, more frequently now since the pandemic, to get new hires on board and everything else. But they also have people that, for various reasons, still can't travel. So how do we create spaces where, for the people that can't attend or for various reasons, still feel equal to the people that are in attendance? And I feel that IT came in and said, oh, we need all these new equipment in the rooms, but they really didn't consider how the rooms function and how people are going to be interacting. And I love what James said about people being on screen, but that can't work in all circumstances. That can work with a team meeting possibly very well, but it doesn't work for a larger meeting. So how do we create true hybrid meetings where people are remote and in person? Because if it's not with your particular organization, it might be with your clients because they have a different philosophy than you do, or travel restrictions, etc. So that's, since you're all space makers, that's what I wanted to ask you.
I've got quite strong feelings about this topic. I did a lot of work on hybrid meetings, had developed the product from scratch. We, and as you say, a 5-person meeting is very different from a 100-person meeting. It's very different from an 1,000-person meeting. I think it's easy to imagine what the 5 to 10-person meeting is. Microphones are easy, cameras are, it's relatively easy to kind of set up a fairly good hybrid experience where things are relatively equal. I question if equality is the thing that we should be solving for. I think everyone should feel heard and everyone should feel seen and everyone should feel able to express their opinion and everyone should be able to contribute. I don't know if equal is necessarily right because it is always going to be different and there are benefits to both. Sitting in your comfy home, not having commuted is a big win. Sitting in the space, able to socialize afterwards is a big win. It's just, depends on sometimes your personal preference, sometimes what you have been forced to do. On the really large side, I think equality is even harder to come by. And I think you have to really ask yourself, what are you trying to achieve with a large meeting? So are you trying to truly have a collaborative 100-person meeting, all hands meeting? I think it's really, really difficult. David and I were chatting beforehand and, when you create equality, sometimes you create weird situations where you're in the audience and you have to ask a question through the virtual chat because you're trying to create equality amongst everyone so that everyone has the same chat experience, even though it would have been way easier just to put your hand up and ask the question. So you kind of make this odd, broken experience. I think making sure you really, really plan your agenda so you know what you're trying to achieve in each segment and then create segments that work, right? So this is one-to-many. One person talking, no questions. This section is now questions. How are we going to run that in a way which works for everyone? Are we going to pass microphones around so everyone can be heard? Are we going to, and all this takes production, right? And that's the key word that I've really learned through the pandemic really is production. Even on this small, relatively simple virtual meeting, I know that David has someone helping him spotlight. There's behind the scenes work happening that makes this experience more seamless for the host. It's when you're trying to do it all at once, you're trying to share your screen, you're trying to organize people, you're again trying to arrange the segments, you're trying to move the camera, it's not possible to do. And so the major thing with a hybrid meeting, I think, is being really clear with your agenda, planning it out really carefully, and then saying, what are we going to try and achieve in different segments, and having production assistants, be it your assistant, be it a professional, it doesn't really matter, but making sure you know how to run it and that person's dedicated job is running the tech, because otherwise things fall apart. Just as a hint, I could go on, there's a million other things, but I don't want to take up all the time.